No, there's no me. And it says Weekly Space Hangout. Can't have that. Weird. All right, we're live, but are we?
Hello, humans.
Oh, I see. It's got the wrong... You don't get to have that camera, Zoom. There. And then it's not the Weekly Space Hangout.
Technology is evil.
Yeah. All right. And I haven't even finished writing my intro. So.
It's all right. I'm still pulling all my notes up.
Okay. Save that. I'm going to say hi to a bunch of people.
Okay.
And then I can put some headphones on to be a professional. Hello to Adam Synergy, Arnold Post, Bill Sugden, Bort Klankar, Chad Weber. Chad, don't you have a job to do? Colin Jones, DPI 209, Eddie Electron, Esther Gagne, Frank Tippin, Giselle Sabrin, Guido Bibra, Jessica Feltz, John Drake, John Suffill, Kaylee Cerna, Lillian Brennan, Linda Sedik, M.A., Nancy Graziano, Nichols of the Yard, Paranor, Raj Luthra, Ray Cornelius, Rich Wilson, Side MT, Susie Murph, Tam Van Scotter, Umu, Vaster Nick 1, Zapfan. Hey everyone. Welcome to a very fast episode of Astronomy Cast.
We are sorry, but we're not. There is a child who needs rescued. But not.
So I've got.
that,
Don't pick on Chad too much. Hi, Joanne, Ms. Sergusi, Enoch. I've got to run right away, so we can only do the episode of Astronomy Cast, and then I got a book. So apologies in advance for everyone who likes the question show, but episode 53538 says Nightbot. We've been
Nightbot is over enthusiastic, I think.
Yeah. This is like a vision of the future when we're on to our 7th robot bodies and we're doing episode 53538.
Yeah.
53,000 episodes of Astronomy Cast. I've got enough topics.
Have you read Neil Stephenson's new book?
No, I bought the audiobook for it, but I haven't listened to it.
Okay. I'm saying nothing.
Okay. That goes there. Okay. So tell me when you're ready, and I'm going to press record.
I appear to be
Nancy
ready.
says, "Oopas." Rich Wilson. I think Fraser knows that I have a super wonky question lined up. Yeah, no, I wouldn't go if it wasn't important, but it's important, so I have to go.
Okay, so I appear to be ready. I am pressing record. It is recording.
Okay.
Yay.
You did it.
I did it.
I'm also pressed record. I am also pressed record? I have also pressed record. I can speak words good. All right. Astronomy Cast, episode 538. Asteroids, those rubble piles of the solar system. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain, publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hi, Pamela. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Great. I had a chance. I'm writing a review right now, but had a chance to play with just an amazing piece of technology, and so I thought our good friends at Astronomy Cast would want to hear about this. It's called the Stellina, Stellina, and it comes from France, and it looks like the gun from Portal. So it looks like this, you know, are you still there? And it is about, I guess, about the size of a gun from Portal. Anyway, but it's a telescope, and it unfolds. So what you do is you take it outside, you set it up just anywhere kind of flat, and then it unfolds into telescope mode. Looks at the sky, figures out its location on Earth from GPS, figures out the like what it's seeing on the sky, like figures out where it's oriented, takes a picture, autofocuses, and then goes ready. And then you take your phone and then you say, okay, let's take a picture of M51. Let's take a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy. Let's take a picture of the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules or the Ring Nebula or whatever you want. And it just does it. And it's just like on your phone, every 10 seconds, a better and better version of the image pops up until you've had enough. And it's an astonishing piece of technology, like just absolutely incredible, absolutely the future.
And absolutely should not be taken as a carry-on on an airplane because some TSA person is going to think it is a gun turret from Portal.
Yeah, exactly. You could probably, pack it in your luggage, but incredible. And it works. Like that's the part, like I was really skeptical and ready to just,
pan it.
Yeah. But it really totally works. The images are not as good as if you buy all the separate parts and build a proper astrophotography rig. But you know how they say with cameras, the best camera is the one you're going to use.
Yeah.
And this is the astrophotography rig that you're going to use. You're going to take it outside, you're going to set it up, you're going to take pictures. And I was really impressed, and I'm looking forward to doing my review. And it's funny because people are asking me like, how big is the lens? And like, it doesn't matter. How big is the camera? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Right? I don't know. It's like bigger than a roll of paper towel, kind of, but smaller than a stovepipe. I don't know. Right?
Okay.
The point is, photographs of the night sky, better than anything you'll ever see through the eyepiece of a telescope, show up on your phone, and you save them and you share them to social media. And you won't get on a pod, but you will have taken pictures of any object that you could possibly want. So I'm quite
And I bet you
impressed.
could get on a pod, just not for the most beautiful photo. It's for the most in the moment photo.
Yeah. So I'm quite impressed, and I can't wait for this modern future where you don't have to spend all evening apologizing to all your friends because you're trying to set up the telescope and it's not working. You can't polar align it, and the camera doesn't work, and you don't have the drivers. You got to reinstall them. Anyway, yeah. Of course, it costs $4,000. So which if you're gonna buy an astrophotography rig, that's how much you're gonna spend.
It's only the cost of 4 iPhones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you bought 4 iPhones. Come on. All right. Let's get on with this week's episode. Thanks to all the work from Hayabusa 2 and OSIRIS-REx, astronomers are getting a much better look at the smaller asteroids in the solar system. It turns out they're piles of rubble, but fascinating piles of rubble. Let's talk about what we've learned so far. Pamela, you were right there on the front lines as we were looking at images of Bennu, and thanks to OSIRIS-REx, and like it's just a pile of gravel.
Yeah. So one of the sad things that we discovered is our rock is only slightly denser than water, which means it's not one rock. It is a myriad of rocks, loosely held together, with gaps between the stones. And I don't know about you, but like I've heard of rubble pile asteroids, and in my mind, rubble pile asteroids were like, take a regular asteroid, hit it, and it falls apart into like 5 or 6 pieces. And those 5 or 6 pieces come back together. No big deal. It's still mostly a solid object, kind of dusty, has a few boulders. No big deal. And Bennu was just like, no, Not gonna be that asteroid. Ryugu, no, not gonna do it. These are two objects that both look like D&D dice that have had the worst days of their lives. They are that kind of hexagonal shape that you're used to from dice, but they're made of millions of meter to many meter across rocks that have come together. Very, very little dust, lots of variation in color. And they're just hanging out going, hey, you need to rethink everything you thought about how to deflect an asteroid headed towards Earth.
All right, so what was everything that we thought?
Well, so what we knew is when you look out towards the asteroid belt, you see these what we call families of asteroids. There's the Hygeia family, the Coronis family, the Themis family, the Vesta family, the Ceres family, the Eunomia family, and I'm mispronouncing half of these, and I'm so sorry. All of these families of asteroids come about from having one big main body, so Ceres, Vesta, to give you a couple that we've imaged really well. And over time, these main bodies have been hit over and over and over with other asteroids.
Or
And
a
chunks
spaceship
blown off.
flying
Of course,
through with its little laser going dip, 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 and breaking the asteroids into smaller pieces.
for those of you who remember playing those video
Yep.
games when you were small.
Yep.
And so this leaves behind a main asteroid and a bunch of smaller ones all around it, forming a family of stuff that's made of the exact same composition. And based on seeing this, we imagined that there might be out there some asteroids that had been pretty much completely obliterated, but temporarily. The energy that went into shattering the object wasn't sufficient to send pieces, or at least send all the pieces out at escape velocities. So a large portion of the former object or objects gravitationally came back together. And I don't know why in my head these objects were always made of giant pieces. I guess in my thinking, if they were made of tiny pieces, those tiny pieces would be way easier to fling off in all directions. Think Alderaan getting blown apart. And
Right.
I was so very wrong. So very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to deliver the amount of energy to release the binding energy of the whole asteroid, and whether it cracks into four pieces and they sort of spread apart for a little while and then they crunch back together again, or just like a whole bunch of just gravel. So then, like, I'm imagining you've got these two asteroids on a collision course with each other. They smash into each other and they just obliterate into, because of the amount of energy that's involved, into just gravel, like just rubble. But then that rubble is gravitationally bound to each other. So you've got this cloud of gravel that's floating through space, and it's got nothing better to do but to reaccumulate under its own gravity into this, just whatever is the best shape. And it turns out to be, of course, it's Dungeons and Dragons 8-sided dice, or maybe 10-sided dice.
Exactly. And this also tells us something about the energies of what happens when our own Earth was slammed into by a Mars-sized object. The two objects essentially melted down, obliterated each other. A giant splash occurred that formed the moon. Everything else recoalesced back into forming the Earth. And we went from a Mars-sized object and a smaller than current Earth-sized object that recombined, reconfigured all of their stuffs and became two new objects that were solid objects. But with asteroids, they're smaller. You don't have as much of a binding energy to overcome. You're dealing with shattering rocks, basically, and not having to worry as much about these objects being gravitationally held together. So you overcome that chemical energy. It's essentially hitting it with a giant space-sized hammer. And these pieces aren't molten. These pieces are just broken apart like a boulder.
Yeah.
And this all sounds so very non-exciting until you're trying to figure out how to land on one of these objects. And until you start realizing that this process essentially turned things inside out and got rid of all of the dust and small objects and just left you with a pile of grossness.
So let's talk about this complexity of attempting to find a spot that one might choose to land on the surface of one of these small objects, which of course you were right on the front lines of helping to figure that out. So what was what are the complications that have been added to the whole process now?
Well, originally, both the Hayabusa 2 team and the OSIRIS-REx team assumed that their objects would look sort of like Itokawa, Eros rather, one of these other smaller bodies that we've imaged before that have vast areas of nice, beautiful, smooth, undisturbed surfaces. And that we'd be able to look at our object and find in a nice, easy to reach, kinematically not difficult place, one of these nice, large, beautiful, smooth places. And we wanted a nice big area because, well, these objects are rotating. They don't have a whole lot of gravity. And trying to get down to their surface requires our spacecraft to match the rotational rate of the spacecraft, or sorry, the rotational rate of the asteroid, and come in to contact with the surface long enough to grab a sample through whatever means the various spacecraft are using, and take back off and do all of this without harming the spacecraft, both of which have large solar panels. Now, there's going to be error in coming in for any landing. We have this whole concept of a landing ellipse, which we've gotten used to from watching Mars landings, where we say we expect our thing to land in this area of Gale Crater, for instance, with the Curiosity lander. Well, with our landing ellipses on both Hayabusa and Ryugu, with our original plans, sorry, with Ryugu and Bennu, with our original plans, these landing ellipses were designed to keep our solar panels nice and safe, and they were nice and large, lots of wiggle room. And neither object had a smooth, flat surface anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Anywhere. There were none.
Right.
None.
Yeah. I sort of imagine like imagine trying to have a picnic on the big island of Hawaii's lava field.
Yeah.
And you're just like, where should we sit down? Where should we sit down and spread out our blanket and have a nice picnic on this jumble of razor sharp lava everywhere? And there's no place, and this was the challenge. So, now that you guys have finished mapping the surface of Bennu, like, how bad is it? How many even areas can they even possibly land?
Well, we've identified 4 potential sample sites that are now being imaged in even higher detail. And the way this works is we started off with the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft in a nice high orbit. We did general imaging of the entire surface, created a nice mosaic. Using that mosaic, there was much cursing that occurred.
Yeah.
Because the original plan was use the big mosaic to identify areas for follow-up detailed study. And we did the best we could, which basically was, let's look at everything. And so they dropped the spacecraft OSIRIS-REx into a lower orbit, which meant that we could get more detailed images of the surface. And we looked at all those images, looking for an area that was largely free of large boulders and only had small rocks. And 4 potentially good enough sites were identified. And each of these sites, thankfully, has craters that provide nice, fairly smooth areas. It turns out if you have a giant pile of rocks and you hit it at the right velocity with another rock, that area will get mushed down. And it's those mushed down areas that look the most promising in many ways.
Like someone just stuck their thumb into the eye of Bennu and went, and then that's where you're going to land.
Yeah. So we went from looking for a roughly 80-meter across area to looking for a 10-meter in diameter area to land our spacecraft.
And when you think about how difficult it's been to land spacecraft we saw what happened earlier this year with Beresheet, what just happened with India's Vikram lander. These are very difficult things in what were assumed to be the nicest landing zones you could possibly hope for. And now NASA is going to try to land in, as I said, this razor sharp danger zone.
Now, one of the nice things that we have going for us that Beresheet and the, is it Rivka, the Indian lander?
Vikram.
Vikram. The thing that we have going for us that Vikram and Beresheet didn't have going for it is a whole lot less gravity. With both Ryugu and Bennu, our spacecraft are kind of dropping in to bounce off the surface. So we're not planning to go in and stay. We're planning to go in and with OSIRIS-REx, we have what I personally have decided to describe as a very angry vacuum cleaner. We have a hose that comes down. It has a little conveyor belt like bits similar to what you may see on an extension for a vacuum cleaner, and it pulls up bits of the surface that can then be collected. But it's just a touch and go. It's not a there to stay. And this gives us some benefits where, since we're already planning to pretty much bounce, as long as we don't clip those solar panels on anything, we're pretty good.
Yeah, just don't snag a panel and, like anyone who's ever gone fishing, you send your line down and then it gets stuck to the bottom on the hook.
And it's the clipping of the solar panels that is in some ways the most terrifying potentiality. But we think we've figured out, we hope we figured out how to not let that happen. And we're doing yet another round of imaging. The spacecraft has yet again been dropped into an even smaller orbit. And we are once again taking images of even higher resolution. And some of the members of the CosmoQuest community are going to be asked to once again look at these images. And they're going to be on the mission critical path with the rest of the science team to figure out, okay, of these 4 regions, where in these 4 regions is actually the best scientifically and the safest for the mission. We have to balance both those facets. And then hopefully we'll be able to, go grab our rocks.
So then let's talk about the chilling implications of this for us attempting to prevent an asteroid impact. So traditionally the plan is, you've got your asteroid coming to hit the Earth, and it's going to be 10 kilometers across. That's a city killer. That's a continent ruiner. You fire the Earth's collective armada of nuclear missiles at this asteroid and you explode them on the surface. What happens with your rubble pile?
Well, with a rubble pile, they basically just sort of fall apart and then come back together gravitationally. And I'm like, yeah, so, I'm
imagining like the liquid metal from the Terminator, right?
Yes.
And so you just you shoot it, and then it all just comes back together, and sure, you've reorganized it, you've jumbled it up, but it was already jumbled. You have shuffled a shuffled deck of cards.
And even a bit more disturbingly, the way I view this in my head is it's like trying to push a leaf pile across your lawn. You can't just push in the center. All that's going to do is make a bigger mess. One of the other more reasonable than nuclear weapons ways of deflecting an asteroid is to go plant some engines on it, fire up those engines, and give it a push in a new direction. Well, in this case, when you fire those engines, you might just be burying those engines inside of the asteroid, and that is also not useful.
Right. I can just imagine you think that you've put an engine on the side of this asteroid to push it around, and all you've done is your little rocket is going to be just drilling itself into the middle of the asteroid, and that's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah. And luckily, Bennu and Ryugu are both kind of small. Ryugu's the bigger, it's about 800 meters across. Bennu is about 500 meters. This makes them capable of just like hanging out on a nice city block. Any of you who play Wizards Unite, you could walk across the diameter if you could walk through the asteroid, which again might be possible. It's twice the distance Wizards Unite expects you to walk every single day. These are tiny, but tiny can still destroy a lot of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And
Like what was Chelyabinsk was like about a 15-meter rock, right?
yeah,
So that's like the size of a house. These are the
yeah.
size of a building. Like these are city killers. These are tsunami creators. These are bad days for a lot of people if they hit.
And because they're so fundamentally different, it also means we need to redo all of our models for things hitting the Earth. Our models are based on a variety of different factors and generally span from, hey, we have a really metallic object coming to attack us, to, hey, we have a carbonaceous chondroid, which is basically a big pile of soil coming to attack us. But our models don't generally say, hey, there's this loosely conglomerated together, we don't know how much energy it takes to disrupt pile of boulders coming at us. And this means we need to start rethinking, well, what do the tidal forces of the earth do to an object like this? Is it going to string it out into a larger number of rocks that wraps its way around our planet? Is it going to explode in the atmosphere as any of the vapor and gases inside the planet suddenly undergo a phase change and explode things outward? We know Bennu has volatiles because it's throwing rocks at our spacecraft.
Yes.
This changes how we have to consider incoming rocks,
Yeah.
essentially.
Well, then let's talk about the good news, which is you mentioned volatiles. It is, for our bold future of living in space and attempting to mine asteroids, it feels like this got a lot easier. You no longer need to hard rock drill into the side of a gigantic asteroid. You really just have to scoop and pick stuff up and get it off into space. And you can find volatiles mixed in with the boulders that you can use for all kinds of purposes. This seems like good news for our future of space mining and resource utilization.
And especially with Ryugu, it tells us that the kinds of materials that we normally would have expected to see in the center of an asteroid might instead be on its surface. There are two main models for understanding Ryugu. When you look at Ryugu, it has boulders of two very different colors that are mixed together. And the thinking is that either something came along and clobbered Ryugu and caused a differentiated asteroid, an asteroid that had a different structure on the center and a different structure on the outside, to get knocked apart and essentially get turned inside out a bit, with some of the former interior materials now being turned into boulders on the surface. Or Ryugu is two different asteroids that clobbered each other and mutually came back together to form a new object, again, with these two different colored materials. In either way, you're finding the same stuff on the surface as we presume you'd find on the inside. So you don't have to worry about different layers of strata containing different materials. It's all right there on the surface. Now, with Bennu, we still don't know all of the details. Bennu has this really weird, super shiny stuff scattered in dribs and drabs all over the surface. And we're still trying to figure out what this stuff is. And so, again, here you have multiple compositions mixed together on the surface, and because Bennu throws rocks, proof of volatiles that can melt. And there's your potential fuel, your potential water, all right on the surface.
So, for those of you who are watching from home, when will we see the next big moment in the OSIRIS-REx mission? What's the next big. I mean, they've got to collect that sample. So when's that going to happen?
Right. So I would love to be able to say we are going to be able to announce the exact places where we're going to go and collect those samples next week, in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks. We had a beautiful mission timeline. We really, really did. And the actual asteroid is so much harder to figure out. So I can't tell you.
So we don't know. Like when they've looked at the next round of pictures, when they've figured a place that they think is safe, they'll announce when they're going to make that attempt. And it'll happen sometime in the future. It might, probably not tomorrow, and probably not 100 years from now.
Currently, we're looking at this winter. We're looking at December probably.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go with our timeline kind of got thrown out the window, and we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
But well, this object is so much more complicated than anything we imagined, and we're holding to this orbit at this time, this orbit at this time. But the decision-making processes are taking extra time when they need to.
Yeah. Well, good luck, everyone working with the mission, and good luck, OSIRIS-REx. We watched you launch. Now we want to watch you collect that sample and return safely home. Pamela, do you have some names for us this week?
I do. And the people I'm going to list are people who are supporting us over on patreon.com/astronomycast. You are the people that really allow us to be functional in producing all of this content. Susie gets paid thanks to you. And when we need to, this is what allows us to travel to things like the OSIRIS-REx takeoff. So this week, I would like to thank... Sorry, scrolling. This week, I would like to thank Les Howard, Paul Jarman, Joss Cunningham, Emily Patterson, Dana Norrie, Joseph Hoy, Frederick Hagnikvam Jensen, Kjartan Svari, Ed, Gordon Dewey, Bill Hamilton, Frank Tippin, Greg Thorwald, Richard Riviera, Alexis, Thomas Strupp, and Stephen Shewater.
Thank you so much, Pamela. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Stop that. Save that. So I hate to do this, everybody, but I've got to run. So I'm going to have to shut down the live stream right now. And we will have to save your questions for next week. Thanks, everyone.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye.